Voice of the Sea, learning from experts across the ocean.
Welcome to Voice of the Sea.
In this episode, we're talking about the exceptionally high king tides and citizen science. King tides were widely reported across the state this year, and University of Hawaii Sea Grant researchers are working with community members to document these high water events. As part of the Sea Grant community research, residents across Hawaii and in American Samoa have sent in photos of the effect of king tides in their area, which will be used in research and planning. We start off with Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz.
I got a mark now, but now I'm short.
At Waikiki, near the Moana Surf Rider, talking story with Hawaii Sea Grant communications leader Cindy Natman during the May 2017 King Tide.
Well, I think it's really sinking in. This is our future. You know, obviously this is a combination of factors. This is a really high tide, and we have a southerly swell. So this is not purely climate change, but for sure, this is what we can expect more and more of as the ocean heats up and as the sea levels rise. So here we have this incredible infrastructure, the Moana Hotel, Waikiki Beach, across the state of Hawaii. There are all these coastal places that are going to be at least periodically inundated, and this is not 50 years in the future, it's already happening. Part of what we all need to realize is that this is real. This is not abstract. This is not just for scientists. This is not just for environmentalists. This is impacting all of our lives. Everybody who lives in a coastal community is being impacted by climate change. So getting everybody involved in trying to collect the data to try to understand what we're dealing with. You know, we're going to fight the fight on clean energy and make sure that we make that transition. But in the meantime, climate change is already upon us. So the more we can engage individuals across the state of Hawaii, the better. I think everybody should be involved in the science here. You know, I understand it helps the University of Hawaii researchers to sort of check their models against reality. You know, there's a tendency when you're working on a model, it may look right, but the ocean is an unpredictable place. So the more data we can collect, the better. But you know, I'm not the scientist. I'm the elected official who wants more and more people to take action around climate change. So from my standpoint, what I'm thrilled about is that more and more people are trying to do something about climate. And it could be trying to move more in the direction of clean energy, but in the meantime, it's also trying to make sure that we understand the impacts on our ocean environment. A lot of people in Washington, D.C. don't understand the impact of climate change. They think it's just another issue. But for us, this is our livelihood. This is our lifestyle. And so to be able to bring back some video to say, look, this is really happening, it's very difficult to deny the reality of climate change when it is right in front of your eyes. It's one thing to deny the science, it's another thing to get involved in a partisan argument, but everybody tends to believe their own eyes. And when you're ankle deep in water where you shouldn't be, you see that something very strange and very concerning is happening. Everybody should grab that app from their phone and take an opportunity to learn a little science, but also to help University of Hawaii Sea Grant College program to gather data from across the state about what's happening with climate change, how it's impacting our coastal communities. We've got great scientists, but we need citizen scientists to get involved and collect that data. We really especially need neighbor island leadership. And this is an opportunity for young people who live on the Big Island or Kauai or Molokai or Maui. It's not always clear what you can actually do to make a difference when it comes to climate and when it comes to this beautiful place that we all call home. This is an opportunity for young people to actually do something about climate. So download the app from the Sea Grant College program and participate. And this is a sort of interesting weekend for now, but if this happened all the time, we would be dealing with some really heavy consequences. The Alawai Canal right now is not quite close to flooding, but if we had a king tide with a rain event, we would have a disastrous consequence. And it's not clear that the infrastructure here is built to withstand sustained flooding. Maybe a day or two they can throw down some sandbags and people sort of get a kick out of watching it. But if this were every day, this would change the Waikiki experience and not necessarily for the better. The point is that our communities are impacted by rising sea levels, and it's no longer a theoretical argument. It's right in front of us. It's happening.
The
University of Hawaii's Sea Grant College program, focused on Hawaii's coasts and its communities through sustainable development, safe seafood supply, sustainable coastal tourism, hazard resilience, and healthy coastal ecosystems. Hawaii's Sea Grant.
Welcome back. We're at the Alawai Canal with University of Hawaii Sea Grant Extension Agent Matt Gonser, talking about the importance of king tides to the public and to researchers.
So a king tide is just a very common term, a colloquial term for the highest high tides of that year. It's not something that we made up. It's not the highest high tides ever. It's a recurring annual condition where you just look at the tide tables and you know that's the highest high tide of the year. And here in Hawaii, that happens in two clumps, a couple of months around the summer solstice, so June, July, and then again around the winter solstice in November and December.
So we have these clusters of king tides that happen in Hawaii in the spring and then again in the fall. And why are they important?
One thing that's interesting about king tides that's really helpful for us is that they're predictable, right? They are recurring annually. We know that the seas are rising. We have these observations and it's fact, it's recordable in our tide records, and there are models for its acceleration into the future. But what the king tides allow us to do is observe these higher water levels and use that information as a snapshot of what it could look like at some future time.
In addition to computer modeling or predictions about what our infrastructure might look like in rising sea level, with these king tides, you actually go out and physically observe what it's doing.
Right, so fortunately we're using a free smartphone application, and people can just go out there and you don't actually have to use the smartphone app. You can take a photograph and upload it to a computer, but they're using a digital data sheet, which in essence is on your screen. They take a photo, it records your date, your time, your location. We just ask them to write something about it. So that then allows people to go into the data set, filter and look for the images or the areas that they're interested in learning more about. And once you hit submit, it's immediately uploaded to the public data set.
Can you tell me some of the things that you've learned so far in the project?
Some things are perhaps not too surprising, right? So we know along our beaches, right, there's erosion, or recently we had a pretty high surf event related to a high tide, and the inundation really wasn't that surprising. Some of the things that were perhaps more surprising were areas where there's water coming out of storm drains, where there's road beds that are completely flooded in certain areas. And then we heard a lot of concern from some of the marinas, either the state-owned or some of the private harbors, where not quite boats sitting on top of the harbor deck, but the water level is significantly higher than the actual elevation of the piers. But we're also seeing that the groundwater, this freshwater lens that sits on top of the salt water beneath all of the islands, gets pushed up as the tides come and go. So in some places we've actually seen groundwater penetration, and the only real way to distinguish between that is to take a sensor that measures the salinity. So you can say, is this water brackish? How close is this to the ocean salinity?
By penetration, you mean then the seawater is actually coming in under the island through the porous rock and mixing with that freshwater layer?
If not mixing, pushing that layer up through the ground surface, where it's not impervious surfaces, but in some of the back bay beaches or park areas where the land itself would permit the water to permeate through.
And will that affect our drinking water?
No, so in all of these coastal areas, that's not where we access that freshwater lens. That's significantly more inland in some of the mountain areas.
So if it's not affecting our drinking water, what are some of the potential effects that it might have?
Right, over time, that land could just become permanently wet, right? So it could create a wetland, and perhaps that's not that big of a deal. You know, ecosystems change, they're dynamic, but it could cause significant problems for underground assets like parking structures, wastewater systems, electrical utilities, but also starting to impact and corrode some of the impervious surfaces, and that includes roads. Again, the utilities and things that are just part of our built environment could succumb to some of the corrosive and permanent inundation. This is the actual smartphone application. This is the Apple version, but it is available on both platforms, Apple and Android. And on the Apple, it's called Liquid Mobile Data Collection. And you can see what it looks like here. It's got a little bit of a water droplet with the earth embedded in it. And when you open the app, what you see is actually all of the records that have been entered to that data set, because I'm registered for our free data set. And you can see that we're currently at record number 862. A lot of people have been submitting today, which is May the 27th. And then a lot also through yesterday and Thursday, the 26th and the 25th. And what you see is this plus sign in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And this is where you would go to submit a record. And what we've provided is the actual digital data sheet. So there's certain fields, most of them are required, and some of them self-populate. So you can see as soon as I opened up to make a new record, it had the date, May the 27th, and the time, 5:05, just after 5 o'clock. And there's several things we want, because ultimately we're trying to plot these on a map. So first and foremost, we want the location. You tap the arrow, and it populates our latitude and longitude. Generally, I know that our current location is, we're generally facing east. I'm going to take a photograph heading towards Diamond Head. And again, these are just drop-down menus. Your location description, so we want you to give us a general location description. That just provides a little bit additional information, because in the data set you can filter and do some keyword searches to get these photographs. And then ultimately you can enter your name and tell us something additionally interesting about the photograph. Some people have been going out at low tide, so they write that it's low tide. Some people have been going out to a place that they're very familiar with, and they say something like, I've never seen the water level this high at this location. Ultimately, that's really up to you. What's really important is to actually take the photograph. You can see the icon here for camera. And when you click on that, you get just what you would normally see through your phone's camera. And some good recommendations for taking a picture. I wouldn't necessarily say taking a shot straight out to the ocean is good. What is very helpful is being perpendicular to the shore. So if we then migrate and orient the camera. So I've taken the photo now, and you have the option either to retake the photo, add a caption. I'm just going to use the photograph. And now that we have the photograph, I could enter something interesting about it. Wave run up to building, and the final step is to submit. So it's really as simple as that. Once you've gotten the smartphone app onto your phone, you're just out there. You take a few minutes, obviously, along the shore. It's pretty dynamic, so you want to be safe, observe, make sure that you're in an okay place to take a photograph, and then just enter the fields. And really, we're just very appreciative of all the citizen scientists providing that information.
The Curriculum Research and Development Group in the College of Education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. CRDG's training roots go back over 40 years. Through professional development programs, curriculum workshops, research on teaching methodology, individualized school and district training, and so much more. The Curriculum Research and Development Group, improving schools, improving education. CRDG.
Welcome back. We're at the University of Hawaii Sea Grant offices with program leader Maya Walton to learn more about the Pacific Islands King Tides project and how you can get involved.
We want as many people to participate as possible. We do have trainings. We have videos online that teach you how to use the app, how to sign up for the data set, how to take a good photograph. And we want people to go to places that they know well. So we're really trying to tap into people's place-based knowledge, their local knowledge. Folks have been living near the same beaches or the same stretch of the coastline for many years, many decades, and they've probably seen changes through time. Right. And so those are some of the things we're hoping to capture in the notes and the observations that you can enter through the app. We have students as young as 5th grade participating, contributing photographs. We have people who are retired contributing photos. Anyone and everyone can participate.
People might not even realize that the knowledge that they have because they've gone walking on a beach every day for the last 10 years would be really valuable for this project.
Yeah, and I think that's the really cool thing about citizen science is we're hoping that this project empowers people. This is a map that shows all the places where we've gotten photographs for the citizen science project. And all the dots in purple show the photographs and data that we've received in May. So you can see we have people contributing stuff from Kauai, from Oahu, Molokai, Maui, Hawaii Island, and we even have people that are participating in American Samoa.
Oh, fantastic.
And in the Marshall Islands. But yeah, we're doing this every year. We go out in the summertime and in the wintertime.
Okay.
So if you're busy this summer, that's okay. You can join us
another opportunity
in the winter. Right now we have over 800 photos, 800 unique data points.
Okay.
So probably even more photos than 800. And we have many, many citizen scientists that are participating.
Okay. And if people are interested in going somewhere online for more information, where can they go?
They can go to our website. It's called PacificIslandsKingTides.org. But lots of places where we still need citizen scientists to go. On the island of Oahu alone, there's over 200 miles of coastline.
Wow.
So imagine if we only did this project with Sea Grant faculty and staff.
Right.
We would never be able to cover all 200 miles. So we need lots of help.
Okay.
We need people to go lots of different places.
Okay.
And we hope that the map can help to clue people in where there's gaps, where we need photos to get sent in from. And it's really interesting. In the summertime, we get the king tides in the afternoon. And in the wintertime, we tend to get the king tides in the morning, really early in the morning. 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m., 7 a.m. And another really cool thing I've been noticing is in the summertime, the king tides are with a new moon. And in the wintertime, the king tides come with a full moon. And last year, people were really excited because our photo surveys for the Citizen Science Project were the same time as the supermoon. So people would go out at night and photograph the supermoon, and then go in the morning time to photograph the coastline, the king tide in the morning. We have folks that go out at low tide and go to the same location at high tide to show us the difference between low tide and high tide. That's a really important contribution too. We've had folks go to the same place for multiple photo surveys. So they might go to the same beach summer of 2016. They took a photo winter of 2016, and they're going back again this summer of 2017. Our hope is that over time, as the program builds, that we get this long-term record from the same place, and we can track changes through time through the photographs and the observations that people are sharing with us. We want this program to be a way for people to submit their observations, to be the eyes along the coastline all year long. So if you see something that you think is unusual, you can submit a photograph, even if it's outside of the photo survey dates.
Next, we're back at the University of Hawaii's School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology, talking with Dr. Mark Merrifield, who has been studying climate change and monitoring sea level rise in Hawaii for over 20 years. Dr. Merrifield's work shows that rising sea levels are transforming king tides into flood events. The April 2017 king tide was the highest tide reading ever recorded in the islands, higher even than Hurricane Iniki. In 50 years, Dr. Merrifield predicts that Hawaii will have this kind of flooding event during most high tides.
So here's our event here. It was the highest of the whole record. So
that's that red dot right there is the highest of the high. Wow.
0.78 feet, about 9 inches above or a little more. And you can see it was well above. And from the This is in 1905 all the way to the present. So there were a few events that were comparable. One of those is Hurricane Iniki, which I think was that event. But prior to like 1960, no tide ever, no measured sea level ever got that high.
So actually that's fascinating that the highest tide in April came without a storm, and Hurricane Iniki was actually lower than that, and that was a huge storm event that hit Hawaii.
Right. So in the past, it would have taken a large storm, a cyclone, or a hurricane to get that high of a level. Now we're talking about sort of natural variability, which is pushing us that high. So I guess the message is that the king tide right now, it takes a king tide to get our attention on one of these events, and that's why the king tide is being associated with the flooding. But it's really the sea level that's the problem. And pretty soon it won't be the king tide we're worried about, but the spring tides and then every high tide. Right now, with the current sea levels, we're about maybe every 2, maybe even every year now at the current levels, we'll start to see an event this big. We were talking about how sea level can rise regionally for quite some time. So since 2016, sea levels have been higher than average due to this oceanographic effect of that low frequency shift in the trade winds. So that tends to cluster the events. So we'll see 1 last year, maybe 3 this year, depending on how things go. And then maybe next year we won't see any, but on average, we'll start to see 1 to 2 a year. And then by 2030, 3 to 4 a year. We're getting into a place now, or a time now, where sea level is high enough where we're kind of reaching a tipping point, where these cleared air flooding events, just due to the tide, will start to become more prevalent. And so, I'll hear questions like, well, what's happened to the tide? Is the tide changing in some way? It's not the tide that's changing, it's the sea level that's going up and adding on to that. So by 2030, just by summing this up and taking some high and low predictions of what sea level is likely to be around here in 2030, an event which was early part of the last century, it was sort of like a 100-year event, very rarely seen. By 2030, we'll see it 3 to 4 times a year.
Wow.
And so that will mean basically every king tide will be a flood tide. 2050, middle of the century, it will be not just every king tide, it'll be every spring tide. So that will be, sort of twice a month or more, we'll get these flooding events. 2070, it'll be sort of every other tide. So this is what's called nuisance flooding, or clear sky flooding, I think they also call it.
Clear sky flooding.
So there's no storm, there's nothing, it doesn't even have to be a wave event in the future, it's just the high tide plus the sea level. Kind of what's happening is that, if your fingers are the high tides, right now only the highest of the tides will poke through, but as sea level goes up, more and more start to go above the threshold, and that's why it quickly accelerates once you get past a certain threshold.
Yeah, 2050 is really not that far away if you think about it. So 25 to 44 days is really, that's incredible.
Yep, and that's, again, those are sort of the low and the high projections of sea level. So there are some estimates that are even higher.
Exploring Our Fluid Earth is a dynamic curriculum developed by the University of Hawaii's Curriculum Research and Development Group, teaching ocean science concepts through the disciplines of physics, chemistry, biology, and ecology. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is now available freely online. Find out more at exploringourfluidearth.org.
The University of Hawaii Sea Grant College Program, helping coastal communities of Hawaii and the Pacific through research, education, and outreach. Serving the community from elementary to graduate students. Hawaii Sea Grant.
Island Earth, bringing together university, government, research, and community partners to improve science education and ocean stewardship in Hawaii.